Welcome back again. It's just another day in the life of a military wife. I want to talk about what is holding me back. What are those things that are keeping me from becoming the person I want to be, or even changing my life that I want to know? Places holding me back can be All right, so let's discuss this. One of the things I kind of wanted to share, it just helps illustrate the whole concept. It's called the crab bucket thing. And I came across this whole concept when I was reading a Terry Pratchett book, Unseen Academicals, a while back. And I've been aware of this whole concept for a while, but this explanation just really hit home. And in the book, there are these two characters they're talking. One of them sells, seafood, and the other one's purchasing some. And she goes in to grab, a crab out for the person who's the other person, the girl who sells the seafood. And 3 crabs come out instead of just one. And the one character, okay, it's a crab necklace, thinks it's funny. And Verity, the girl who sells seafood says, "Oh, that's crabs for you. Thick as planks. A lot of them. That's why you can keep them in a bucket without a lid. Any that tries to get out gets pulled back. Yes, thick as planks." And goes on later in the book to be like crab buckets. Lots of stuff is crab bucket. Being born in the wrong street, shape, or race, that's all crab bucket. It's an endless fight for recognition, food, love, appreciation. That's all crab bucket. And basically, the whole concept is, and just like she was saying, um, you really don't have to keep a lid on a crab bucket. If a crab does try to get free, all of the other crabs will pull him back in. And that really does happen in human societies. Individuals who are dysfunctional or really closed off communities don't want people to break free. And I've seen this in my life. So in high school and in college, I had certain friends who we all had issues. Like everyone's got issues, but we all had issues. But my thing was, I wanted to change. I wanted to be different. When I switched from high school to college, I wanted to leave behind some of the things I didn't like about myself in high school, or some of the limitations and boundaries I had felt I had in high school on me, and become a new person, or grow at least and develop as a person. And I had certain friends who just did not appreciate that. And it caused a lot of friction. And eventually I had to give up those relationships because they didn't want me to change. And later on, I found another friend. She was talking about how when you are a dysfunctional person, when you have unhealthy coping mechanisms, or you are an enabler, or um, things like that, when you've got those unhealthy characteristics in your life, you tend to attract similar people. You tend to be surrounded. Those are environmentally, created attributes. They're learned attributes. And so it's usually because you're in an environment that has created them, or even if you leave that environment, you will attract people like that. And as you start to change, as you start to go and get healthier, and her and I were in a support group together. As you change and as you grow and as you develop, and you become a different person, they will almost turn on you because they don't want you to change. They want to feel comfortable in the way they're living, even though it's unhealthy. and it's making them unhappy, and seeing you change points out what they need to do, and they're uncomfortable with it. And this happens a lot. So when I realized my health was just crud, like my health was just going downhill, the doctors are like, well, you can drastically change your lifestyle and your health is going to get better, or you can keep doing what you're doing. And basically, I had to decide that watching my kids grow up, living to see my grandkids, or just living to grow old with my husband was more important than eating whatever I wanted and doing whatever I wanted. Like basically not exercising. I hated working out. Oh my gosh, I hated working out. But I had to make the decision that living by a restrictive diet and being more physically active and working out and making other changes in my life was more important to me than the food. And I realized slowly that my whole life, like interacting with friends, going on a date with my husband, my whole life revolved around food. And that's just not healthy. Like, food is important, food is good, we need food to survive, but your whole life should not be about food. And I realized going through this whole process how much I emotionally would eat. It wasn't that my body needed the nourishment, I was using it as a psychological, um, like, fluffy comforter blanket thing to make me feel better. And I had to give that up. I had to make drastic changes. And I was talking to another friend who had gone through the same sort of medical transition as I was going through. And she said it was really hard for her because her two best friends were super supportive at first. And she was a military spouse just like me. And her husband was deployed and their husbands were deployed. And so they were super supportive at first. They're like, oh, let's get together. We'll do dinners together. We'll support you. But then as she started to get healthier and get in shape and lose weight and have energy and want to do other things besides just get together and eat, um, one of her friends specifically kind of turned on her, almost turned her back on her because she wasn't she she was uncomfortable with it. She didn't want to see those changes, and it hurt because the thing is they all had things that they needed to do to improve. So one friend just got jealous and frustrated and didn't want to do anything with her anymore. She's like, "Oh, you're just no fun anymore." Um, and the other friend was like, "Hey, I want to get healthy too. Can you help me?" And and so she was able to be a mentor for that friend. And it's interesting because that the first friend, that's crab bucket. That's the whole crab bucket mentality. And I think sometimes we can be part of the crab bucket without recognizing it, or we can get trapped in a crab bucket without recognizing it. And half of the battle is recognizing, whoa, this is crab bucket. This is, you know what? They're not bad people, but I don't need that vibe in my life. You know what? That's okay that they feel that way, but I need to do what's best for me and for my health. And that's a lesson I've had to learn over and over in my life because I've fallen into quite a few crab buckets and I have worked on myself throughout the years to try to attract positive people, people who are goal oriented, who want to improve. And I've realized that there are people who make me feel uncomfortable because they are a lot more successful than I am. They are closer to becoming, they are closer to who I want to be than I am. And every now and then I will start to feel those, less than desirable feelings. I'll feel uncomfortable around them, or they'll make me feel insecure or inadequate. And I have to recognize and identify that is not fair to them, and that is not fair to me. And instead of letting myself feel insecure, I have to turn it around. I have to have a paradigm shift, and I have to be, what can I learn from them? What can I use from being around them to become more of who I want to be? Instead of feeling uncomfortable because they highlight how far I have to go, using them and their successes and how they've accomplished that to help me get a little closer to what I want to be. And so that's really what I wanted. I want to focus on with this whole thing. And interestingly enough, I I was not a huge fan of when my husband wanted to join the military. I did not like that idea. And part of it was I really missed my family. I really missed the community I grew up in. And there was nothing wrong with that. There was really wonderful people there. My family are really good people. But I can now see how moving away from home was one of the best things for our marriage. Being away from what we grew up with and having to start all over was amazing because it allowed us to reinvent ourselves. And we've had that opportunity every time we've moved to be like, okay, I want to change this. I want to improve this. And because you're starting over in a new place where really no one knows you, you can reinvent yourself. You can say, you know what? I want to be more outgoing. I want to be more positive. I want to be more physically active. I want to eat healthier. I want to XYZ. You can set these goals and make these changes. And because nobody there knows you, they're not going to know any different. And um, I've loved the freedom. I've loved the freedom that the military moves have enabled me. And I've realized I've kind of almost become dependent upon them. And that's another issue. Not everyone's going to have the chance to pick up and move and start all over again every time they want to improve their life. And so we have to learn how to get out of these crab buckets without moving. And that is not an easy thing to accomplish. And so that's kind of what I want to dive into a little bit. Part of the reason why making those changes from high school to college was so hard was because several friends from high school who knew me in high school, who were close friends, including my best friend at the time, went to the same college as me. And I feel like as I did, and I feel like somehow they got the impression that we were just going to continue on where we left off. I don't think they realized that I had a game plan to reinvent myself. And maybe I could have expressed that clearer and communicated better. I was only 18 though, and but once it became clear that I wanted to reinvent myself, that I wanted to become, I wanted to change, I wanted to grow, I wanted to, you know, eh, you know, all those things. Um, it became really clear that they were not going to be supportive of that. And we just really drifted apart. We drifted apart in our interests, in our goals, and what we expected from life. And it just became more and more evident as time went by. And so after my sophomore year, I decided to serve a mission for my church to go help the immigrant population in New Jersey, Spanish speaking immigrant population, help out, serve there, um, and also share about Christ and how Christ had helped me in my life. And that was phenomenal because for the first time in my life, because part of the rules when you choose to do this, so that you can focus on dedicating your life to Christ and service, is that you don't call or text or anyone from back home. You can write snail mail letters. Now, some of these things have changed a little bit since I was a missionary. But you can email your family once a week and you can write snail mail letters. But that just making that change, focusing my life on something new, serving others, and not worrying so much about me. And then being able to kind of make a clean break. And then the other thing was I'd somehow found myself stuck in the middle of my mom and my sister's relationship. Like somehow I had allowed myself to be almost the intermediary, or at least that's how it felt. And so being able to step away and let them build their relationship, I realized was huge because they needed to be able to have their own relationship without me in the middle. And for so long, it had been the three of us. And I had a relationship with each of them, and they had the opportunity to strengthen their relationship, just the two of them. So, anyway, on my mission, I had the opportunity to um, be in a completely different environment. I'd grown up on the West Coast. All of a sudden, I was on the East Coast. I'd grown up in an immigrant community, yes, but this was a totally different concept than I was used to. I wasn't used to generational poverty. Even though I'd grown up in an immigrant community, um, most everybody wanted to improve their life. The education was important. Um, it was really shocking to see generational poverty and inner city crime and all of those things because I literally thought some of this stuff was just, things in movies or things in TV. Like, I didn't know that it really existed in the United States. Like, really was this, like, it was super naive. Like, looking back, I was really young. This was super naive, but I really feel that was the important part of doing this. Serving a mission, going and being exposed to a whole different like community and culture and walk of life, being able to see that even in the same country, we can live in very different worlds. I have a lot more love and compassion for the people of those inner cities in Jersey where I served, now that I understand where they're coming from. But it was just mind blowing the cultural differences just from one side of the country to the other. And granted, the United States is a large country, but that was a huge, just mind opening experience to realize that there were individuals who were born, raised, lived, and died in the same neighborhood, in the same mile block, had never seen the ocean, even though they lived 2 hours from the coast. They, no one in their family had ever seen the ocean, even though they lived 2 hours from the coast. It was just mind boggling for me. And because I hadn't traveled a lot, but I had traveled some, and I started to realize that if all you ever know is that square mile, if all you ever know is that neighborhood you grew up in, it's really easy to feel trapped. It's really easy to feel disconnected from the rest of the world. And how liberating travel was, and how liberating it was for me to be able to go outside of my comfort zone and serve these people and not serve them in you know, here, I'm going to rescue you. I'm so awesome. But go in and be like, okay, what can I do to help you? And sometimes it was translation. We would do free translation for Spanish speaking immigrants for different things because they didn't know how to communicate very well in English. Free translation services. Sometimes we would teach English classes for free. Because they wanted to get a better job or get into college or whatever. We would teach, of course, about Jesus because I was a missionary, it was a religious thing. But we would do these different things. We helped out in a thrift store, sorting out donations to be sent to third world countries. We worked in a hospice center, helping out with different programs and paperwork and things like that. We helped in a hospital uh, with just different things. Mostly, I ended up helping out in the gift shop. But we were always serving people. We were always trying to help in whatever way that community particularly needed. And by and large, it ended up being interpreting and English classes and things like that. And years later, I was watching a show that was talking about, you know, helping, making a difference in these kinds of communities. And one particular place that I served, that I was in, the graduation rate of like, I think it was like the graduating class would have been like 500 or 800, somewhere in between there. And there was like less than 10 that actually graduated. And it was appalling. I could not believe so few people were graduating high school. But then at the same time, considering that a lot of these kids were latchkey kids, they didn't have supportive families, they didn't have people to help them with their homework, they didn't have those resources. It's not surprising. Well, one woman saw that about her community. She was able to get out. She was able to get to college. She was able to get an experience, and she got it with music. That was what, had got her out. And so she came back and she put together a free nonprofit after school program that would teach music and other stuff to these kids in this community that I had been in. And it was completely free. They could come. The one condition was they had to do their homework first before they could participate in the free program. And that program has led to a huge increase in graduation rates in that community. And I just, that is how you change the crab bucket. That is how you make a difference and you get out of the crab bucket. She got out of the crab bucket, but instead of piecing out and never looking back, she went back and she started to fix it. She started to fix that crab bucket. And that's what I want you to kind of as a takeaway this week. You may not be able to pick up and move and reinvent yourself, but you can make those changes. You can set those boundaries. You can stand up for yourself. And